So welcome everyone. It's wonderful to have you all online for our webinar. If I can just ask you all to pop yourselves on mute, that would be great. We're actually here today with a very special guest, Erin Clark. She's an absolute superstar when it comes to commercialising technology products and technology services. She's a real dynamo, and we're really lucky to be able to tap into her insights today. So one of the things that we did talk about when we were coming up with ideas around this topic was what are the things that come up most around the challenges facing new startup, new businesses, and also existing businesses who are really trying to forge ahead with providing technology offerings. And a lot of it comes around to this commercialisation piece. So we're very lucky today to be really honing in and delving into that as a subject. So welcome to Business Women Australia. I'm Lyn Hawkins. I'm the National Director of Business Women Australia, for those of you who haven't met me. I'm a founder of Business Women Australia. We founded this as a national collective in 2015, but its original roots came from 2008 from Women in Business WA, where Sue Rowe established that, and it was then taken over and grown into a fantastic local community of entrepreneurial and executive women. And then, of course, now we're national. So we have an amazing collective of female leaders from all sorts of sectors, from states and from professions and specialisations. So I'd just like to acknowledge the country in which we're meeting today. We've come in from all around Australia today. I'm actually on the land of the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, and I'd like to pay my respects to elders who have danced, lived and celebrated on this land for 60 to 120,000 years. I'd like to pay my respects to elders past, present and those emerging leaders, and celebrate our Indigenous sisters in business. And of course, it's a very special time at the moment where we're really celebrating Indigenous culture, Indigenous language, Indigenous wisdom. And it's a really wonderful country for us to be on and being a part of. So without any further ado, I would just like us, if you do want to acknowledge the country in which you are, just pop it into the chat box. BWA is an organisation where we got together as a bunch of females that really thought, how can we actually create a collective where we can collaborate and co-create things that really raise the visibility of business women and also help each other achieve success in business and in life. So this is sort of where our vision and our mission came from, and it morphs all the time. Every year our program looks very different because we are truly collaborative. We don't sit back and design a program and then try and sell a program. We actually design everything around our leading members and what it is that their expertise is and what it is that they want to message to help our country improve and to help women improve our position in making impact in business and in our communities. So people ask us, well, who's in the collective? It is very much made of business owners and entrepreneurs, but also directors, executives and managers, employees. We've got a lot of employees that are starting to come in who are, very ambitious in terms of their career journeys, a lot of professionals and consultants and wonderful coaches, executive coaches and life coaches. And we have a very strong cohort of C-suite women and women on boards. Some of our biggest online discussions over the last 12 months have been really around how, what boards navigating sort of a lot of the issues that are facing them. So we sort of say that we're a community of leaders, and we view leadership not as a title, but more as a frame of mind. And we view this concept of leadership as being very much focused on not just leading others, but very much focused on leading ourselves. Leadership obviously starts with a massive amount of self-awareness. So we do a lot of work around that personal growth piece as much as we do around business improvement. So that's a little bit about Business Women Australia. Being founded by women and designed by women, the first thing we did before we set out anything to do with our vision and our mission and our business strategy right from the start was we spent half a day with a facilitator really delving into what would be the shared values that would underpin the organisation and the collective that we have. And inclusion and diversity was massive, that everyone is welcome. It doesn't matter where they are in their career or their business journey, they're very much welcome to join us. During the pandemic, we put everything online and we made it free because we knew that women were struggling. A lot of women were, were really struggling, particularly entrepreneurial women and women in hospitality, women in retail. Even women that were in HR roles dealing with all the pressures that suddenly, got thrown onto their desks after years and years of just complaining about being stuck in compliance roles. Suddenly they were leading organisations through the pandemic. And so we decided to run a whole bunch of different support programs and discussion groups and sounding board and peer groups, and we put them all out for nothing. So we really... we really have a generous, spirited community who give a lot of time to the cause, really, and to the movement. Courage and honesty is a massive one where, we have to be fearless. To make mistakes is important, and it's a part of our learning journey. And that's where the collaboration piece is really powerful, because together, if we make mistakes together, we can have a really good laugh about it, can't we, Erin? But this is what it's all about. It's that failing forward thing. So if that sounds like something that you would like to see more of, we've got a few new faces on today. We'd love to see more of you. Have a look at our website. We've got lots of information up there. All our members get a public-facing directory listing. We don't hide our members. It's all about pushing them out, promoting them so that we can refer to each other. So it's easy for people to find these amazing female leaders. There's a couple of different levels of membership. And I have on the call here today, Leanne Jeffrey. Leanne, for those of you who are interested and got any questions about which level of membership or how to get involved, reach out to Leanne and she can give you some insight about how it all works. We have got a scholarship on the go at the moment. Our wonderful partner, Anne-Marie Cross, who runs our Thought Leadership Academy in the background with Business Foundations course, is offering a fully paid scholarship to that course. It's a wonderful course for those of you who are sort of stepping out in business and really trying to work out the value propositions that you're positioning around your good, your better, your best. Tapping into Anne-Marie's entrepreneurial and marketing brain is definitely worth it. So if money's an issue, I think it's an incredibly well-priced course anyway, but I mean, this would be great to get that scholarship. So that closes on the 17th of July. And on our website, I think if you jump in onto that, there's a portal you can upload your video to or whatever. We also partnered with FireUp. We found that a lot of women were looking at doing coaching, either in their roles as leaders in organisations, really wanting to be able to work well and empower their teams, but also a lot of corporate and professional women and entrepreneurial women setting up their own businesses as coaches. So we did a lot of research around who would be good to partner. Kathy McKenzie was actually recommended to us by our community over on the East Coast. She runs out of Sunshine Coast. She's part of the ICF, which is the International Coaching Federation. And as an RTO, this is an accredited course for ICF, plus it's a Cert 4, and they offer a diploma as well. So we've actually partnered with them as our probably our ideal coaching pathway if people are looking at a coaching course. I'm actually just finished my Cert 4, and I've got to say it's been fantastic. Even as a parent, I've found it to be better because the power of coaching is really helps you become more of a radical listener, I guess, is really what it's about. But I wish I'd done it when I was working in corporate, to be honest, with my teams. Those of you who are social, love to see on social, we have a LinkedIn group. Our members, our classic members and our premium members can post freely in that group. We have, I think, 5,500 women around Australia that are in that group. We have a company page. We have please follow that. We have, of course, our website, our Facebook page. Please follow us on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. And our classic and premium members actually are welcome to our private Facebook group, which is a nice way to offer special things, promote what you're doing, have a chat if you want to ask a question. It's a good place to engage with the membership in there. And of course, our partners. We had some very big partners all drop out. Our sponsors dropped out just when COVID hit, but if it wasn't for these amazing collaborative partners, Kathy and the team at Catco Enterprises, Donna and the team at Solo Accounts, my crew in the background at Hawkins Marketing, intact teams under the guidance of Jessica Schubert and, of course, the wonderful Anne-Marie Cross. And we love to also acknowledge 3 Drops and Joe Bradbury. Great Southern wines are our favourite wines. Joe's always going around Australia and doing Business Women Australia wine tastings, and they're wonderful, fun events. We just had one in Sydney at an art gallery that was a pop-up art gallery that in Darlinghurst. It was a great night, and she did a tasting in Canberra, and she's talking about offering a masterclass for us here in Perth, hopefully before the end of the year or early next year. And the wonderful inspiration source, Vita Carlino, who hosts our monthly Perth Courageous Conversations. That's always a great way to really connect with women on a deeper level, is to come along to one of those in-person Courageous Conversations. They really are special. We had one this week, and we talked about head and heart leadership. So that was a pretty great thing. Okay, we've got some things coming up. For those of you who are on the East Coast, Sydney walk and talk every month in the Domain. The next one coming up is the 20th of July. Bunbury are also doing a walk and talk on the 22nd of July, rain or shine. Get your wet weather gear out. On the 10th of August, we're back online. We've got some West Australian specialists in the area of health and wellbeing, talking about a healthy mind in business, and that's facilitated by Julie Broad, our chapter leader in Bunbury. She's actually up in the Pilbara working with some Aboriginal communities. And so she'll be zooming in to facilitate that one. On the 17th of August, back in the Domain with the Sydney crew, and the 19th of August with Vita Carlino at the Inspiration Space. We have a long lunch with gourmet pizzas and a courageous conversation around the corporate career myths that get in our heads. That can be equally applied to our entrepreneurial career myths as well, for those of you who are entrepreneurial. But you're not here to hear from me. We're all here for Erin. So for those of you who don't know what a technology commercialization specialist is, you will soon find out. Basically, Erin is very passionate about helping founders find their clarity and get traction. So she's worked with some of Asia Pacific's biggest and smallest organisations to create value from really cool technologies. And she is passionate. You can't help getting excited about technology when you talk to Erin. She's the director of the Exchange Collective. That's a commercialisation consultancy firm. She's a serial entrepreneur. She's founded multiple startups, including her current passion pursuit, Dark Stry. So she's basically building a self-guided adventure tour for urban explorers to reactivate cities. And we're really excited to be going on one of those adventures with Erin soon. If you can't wait for the BWA one, she's got other groups going through as guinea pigs. So reach out to her if you want to be one of those. She's got a BA in Media and Communications, and she's got a grad cert in IT project management and an MBA on top of all of that. So she's a very passionate female, a leader in business, and she's very passionate about women to start and stay in STEM. So, she's a bit of a STEM poster pin-up girl. And when we were brainstorming about this, as I said to you, this was one of those important subjects that I think really is, when we think about the failure rate of companies when they really are trying to explore and grow and succeed in this technology space. It really is, the statistics are pretty horrendous. So over to you, Erin. Do you want to, I'll stop sharing this and we can hear from you.
Fantastic. Thanks for the introduction, Lyn. I'm just bringing my screen up now. Just bear with me while I pop into presentation mode. And while I'm doing that, Lyn was talking about some of the different BWA events. I absolutely love the ones at Inspiration Source. They, in terms of just having those courageous conversations, I think, as a founder, I've found it really helpful to tap into a really supportive group of people who are very honest and have really helped challenge and shape some of the things that I've been doing in business. And we'll be hopefully launching in the next few weeks as well. But what I'm here to talk about today, as Lyn said, is talking about, in good old Jerry Maguire terms, show me the money. So for all of us, whether we're working for large organisations or small ones, we're always under pressure to be demonstrating cash flow. So what we're going to be talking about today and exploring is what are the different things to look out for, so that you're, whether you're a leader or whether you're a founder, what are the types of early warning signs to look for. So as Lyn alluded to in her introduction, my career journey has been interesting and varied. So my claim to fame from my journalism degree is that I was on the Drive program in Prambors FM in regional Indonesia and never worked as, in journalism after that. So I've always worked in the space between people and technology. So really working to help translate great ideas into products and solutions that people actually want to use and pay for. So which is very much what we're talking about today. So what we're kind of going to, for those who kind of want to think about, okay, from a framework or technical perspective, what are we going to be talking about? So we're going to talk a bit about marketing, but in its true sense, not in its marketing being the colouring in department, but marketing and marketing strategy. A bit of a chat about Lyn, and then I'm going to get hopefully some great debates happening about how do we actually measure customer experience, because it's so intangible. I've popped in the bottom there. I do also work a lot around user experience and product development, but we won't be talking too much about that today. But more than happy over a coffee or a glass of wine, if anyone in the BWA community wants to pick my brains about that. So that's what we're focusing on. And it's really exciting that we've got a diverse group of people in the room, because I do, as Lyn mentioned, everything from global organisations right through to 1 and 2 person startups. But I'm mindful that the session is being recorded. So most of the examples that I'm going to use today are from my current passion project, or my husband and my current passion project, which is the seeing history differently through self-guided walking and driving tours. So if you hear me talking about Dark Story, that's our business where we practice what we preach as well. So what are we actually going to talk about today? What have you signed yourselves up for? So really appreciative that everyone's giving up their time this morning. So we're going to have a bit of a chat about indicators and why they're important. Then explore a bit of a lightning round. So I'm just going to kind of give Erin's top 6 indicators. So what are my 6 go-to indicators that I like using? Why do I like using them? But really mindful that we've got a great group of people together who are founders in their own right, business leaders, those types of things. So we're going to get into breakout sessions and really explore from your different perspectives, what do you think's missing? What indicators have you tried? What indicators work? What don't work? And then what we'll do is we'll come back together to kind of go, if there was one indicator that you could use, which one, I'm going to give you 6, which one would work, which would be most important for where you are. So whether you're in your own business or you're a consultant working in that space. And Lyn is very much responsible for keeping me on time because as I mentioned, I'm quite notorious for being able to talk about this topic for days. So I thought everyone would get a laugh out of this. Hopefully everyone gets the cultural reference. I think I'm starting to show my age when I realise that not everyone's seen The Castle, which is a bit of a worry. Maybe we can do an event around that.
It's my favourite movie of all time, Erin.
Excellent. So particularly a lot of the founders that I work with, I hear this a lot. I'm glad that there's a few fellow castle lovers on the call as well. And I think particularly in those smaller enterprises, it can be really hard because you're constantly spinning plates. So the last thing that you're thinking about doing is building dashboards and tracking metrics and those kinds of things. So often find when you ask founders, how's your business going? It's great. Everything's fine. Everything's good. We've just got this little cash flow problem, but it's fine. It's good. Everything's fine. So what we're uncovering today is really helping organizations move from the how do we know we're successful, it's a vibe, into what types of ways could we measure whether we're going to be commercially successful or not. So hopefully next time you see that you can have a little bit of a laugh. We always love that the person who is a technology specialist always struggles with PowerPoint. That irony is not lost on me at all. Because what we're talking about today is commercial success, I thought this beautiful graphic, which you can see is not mine, I cannot take responsibility for it, was really to kind of get people thinking about, well, what is commercial success? Lyn and I were sort of having a conversation before today's session. Obviously, you preempted this, Lyn, about a lot of smaller businesses have this perception, particularly if they're going for investment, that they may not actually need to be commercially profitable. They don't need cash flow because the investors will just keep throwing money in. So it's keen to kind of get everyone's thoughts about when we think about what commercial success is that something that resonates? Is it just cash flow? Is it investors? When I say commercial success, what kinds of things come to mind for people on the call today? So you're welcome to either unmute or throw it in the chat, but I can see that Zoe's unmuted.
I was just going to, I work for a venture capital backed scale up, and I think longevity kind of is a word that sort of sits with me, because we're doing a lot of strategic planning at the moment for FY23, and there's just in terms of being able to pivot and seeing our sort of true market offering, and we have to keep hustling. That scale up stage doesn't sort of hasn't ended yet.
I was talking, I gave a talk last year, which was a part of a debate about is startup or scale up, which one's easier? Results were mixed.
Yeah, that's right.
So Zoe's mentioned longevity as being an important measure. What are some of the other thoughts and experiences around what commercial success looks like?
Well, the answer that I'm going to give you, Erin, and that is, a building of revenue. As an investor, I like to see, obviously, even fairly early indications that people are going to be prepared to pay for something if it's a commercial enterprise. Obviously, if it's a technology piece that's a part of a product or service offering that's supporting something else, that's different. But if it's a tech innovation that has a commercial future, I like to see that there is indication that people are prepared to pay for it, and that's actually showing some sort of growth, and that the growth of that isn't such that the cost of winning those sales is too great. You know, a lot of ventures I look at, and just the cost of the marketing to get the users to convert to paying users is sometimes not worth you know, the expense. You know, so it's a really tricky one, because again, you know, organizations like Zoe's, and you know, that's, you know, it's a long game. It is a long game, but it is something that investors like to see, that okay, if it's a long game, when is that going to you know, when do we start hitting the ground where it really starts building on its revenue projections?
Definitely. I think Lyn's preempted one of the metrics. Genius.
I promise I didn't look too closely at your PowerPoint before.
No, it's good. All right, I'll move. So Lyn alluded to when in the introduction is really starting to think about when businesses fail, the stats, as she said, are pretty scary when you see them. So 20% of businesses fail in the first year, 60% of businesses fail by year 3, and really thinking about for anyone who's been involved in a failed business, it's not just a statistic, the damage the toll that it has on the individual, their family, employees. There's a lot of impetus to get that product market customer fit right, because there's a lot that sits behind people's hopes and dreams. So about 300,000 people exit businesses in Australia every year. So that's a pretty scary stat when you think about that. That's 300,000 people's hopes and dreams that hopefully, by thinking about having an early warning system in place for their metrics, can really start to make a huge difference, not just on a professional level, but also on a personal level as well. And so that's a pretty scary stat. But looking at analysis, what are the main reasons why businesses are not successful? So the most obvious one sits at the top. So if you ask any founder, why did we fail? We didn't have enough cash. So it's always cash flow, but really starting to think about, and for those who are statistically savvy, you've already worked out that this doesn't add up to 100%. And so the reason that it doesn't add up to 100% is that the founders that were surveyed, so this is from CB Insights, who are pretty well-known global research company who specialise in startups and scale-up research and work a lot with investors internationally. What you can see is that from the respondents, they've picked one or more categories. So it's really interesting that cash is first and foremost, but when you start to tap into that, what you can see really quickly is that cash is almost like the lag indicator. So all of these other things happened and then they ran out of cash. So they had no market need. So obviously they didn't have money coming in. Then they ran out of cash. They got outcompeted. Then they ran out of cash. So it's really important when thinking about cash flows. It's kind of, it's the outcome. It's not the reason that a particular business ran out of cash. So in preparation for today, I really started to kind of delve into these in a bit more detail and think about, well, what are the root causes? So, 10 is always too many to remember. So if we broke it down, what would be the 3 main reasons why businesses fail? So it's either around markets and customers, products, or so markets, customers, and products. So there's really only 3 kind of main root causes. I haven't touched on legal today because it's a whole other separate goldmine. And I know we've had previous sessions with BWA with some really great legal people who are part of the collective as well. So they'd be good to tap into. So I mentioned before, when we think about market, having the wrong market, it's not marketing as the colouring in department. So when you hear me talking about marketing today, it's really in its textbook sense. So it's really thinking about, have we got the right pricing? Are we advertising the product in the right place? Have we got the right marketing processes in place? So, and I think that was where Lyn alluded to the costs of marketing. Are we positioned in the right thing, and are we promoting our products in the right way? So we're talking about market, that's what we're talking about. When we're talking about product, there's kind of two parts to product. There's kind of the process. So how do we repeatedly build a product? And how do we know that it's a good product? Sometimes it can be quite subjective. And then last, and we can debate about whether that's the most important part or not, is, did customers have a good experience? And you nail the sweet spot of market, product, and customer, and huzzah, money happens. So that's my perspective. So I've gone through and thought about experience with customers, looked at the stats and thought, you know what? It's about market, it's about product, and it's about customer. But really mindful that we've got lots of talented people on the call. What's missing from that? Or when you reflect on your experiences in business, do these three things, thumbs up, thumbs down? What's missing? Thumbs from Lyn? I can't see absolutely everybody. Thumbs up, thumbs down. Not sure. Good. Yep.
Sorry, Erin. I think who else you're competing with? You know, often there's a competing product or service, and it's not immediately obvious, but it's a substitute. So it comes down to wrong market a bit, yeah.
Yeah, is that idea of substitution. It's quite interesting for Dark Story, because we're a self-guided walking tour. Our substitute is not necessarily a guided walking tour. It might be doing something completely different. So it might be going out for a lunch or those types of things. It's thinking about substitutes is a really interesting topic to kind of delve into.
Another one's potentially sort of trends that are happening in your industry, or sort of external factors. Like, just an example, we work a lot with the university sector. You know, there's been huge changes in the university sector with, you know, through COVID and restructures and things like that. So sometimes even from a technology sense, actually having staff within universities there to run your software, there's a lot of disruptions in that at the moment.
Yeah. And I can see that Selma's mentioned on the chat, technology is missing. And that's a really interesting one, because I always have should technology be front and center? Should it be hidden? Is quite an interesting debate. So that's something for us to kind of, I think, reflect on and unpack, is should technology be core to what we're talking about, or is it a means to an end? So I'd be really interested in people's perspectives on that.
Just one more thing I'd like to add to this, of course, is the cost management side of things. Especially I've noticed in a lot of very excited startups where there's massive salary overheads, and quite often the founder is the one that's not getting paid. So, you know, sort of those cost blowouts that can come predominantly from salary as well can be a big one, and where to house them, you know, salary, and sometimes bringing everyone into a cooperative workspace and the costs of all that associated with that. So, you know, that's another one. So I'm interested in hearing more about your concepts of lean, Erin.
Excellent. So I'm mindful of time, so I'll get into the main event of talking about the 6 different indicators. So I mentioned, so we've got 3 different areas, and when we're thinking about have we got the right market, I always think about market as being the canary in the coal mine. So if you've not got your market fit right, everything else kind of cascades from there. You might need to hire more people to make up for not having the right fit. You might need to spend a lot more on marketing than what you would typically. So thinking about who are we targeting? So we're after the right segment in terms of industry, those types of things. Lots of different ways that you can segment your audience. So for example, think about Dark Story. When we first started only back in February, we were thinking that it would be targeting locals. So particularly a younger demographic would want to come into the city, have a fun day out. What we found very early on is that they're actually quite a difficult market to segment, to target. And one of the other hilarious things that we didn't realise in that market is we're talking about historical pub crawls to a market who are drinking less than ever before. So that epiphany very quickly went, okay, so we've got this product that is talking about pub crawls, but okay, so who is the market who is drinking the most right now? So it's really thinking about how do we take that market, how do we take that product and take it to a completely different market? So you'll be very interested to know that that market is now, that product is now targeted to women in their late 40s to early 60s. So very much around, it's now a product for ladies who lunch, who want to go out in a group together. So you can say that that's where, and so we would have been on the wrong channels. So when you think about the how, we would have been on Instagram saying how great is Dark Story, come on our pub crawl. But that particular group, they're all on Facebook. So really thinking about who are you after, and then how, what does your marketing funnel look like? So are you on the right channels? So we could have potentially spent far too much on Instagram, whereas our cost of customer acquisition on Facebook is fantastic. It's been great for us. And then that means that from a pricing perspective, it's not just thinking about, we talked about competition before, is really thinking about what will the market bear. So rather than how much does it cost me to produce, but thinking about what are the substitutes, what are my competitors doing, and therefore what is the highest price that we can possibly get away with charging, and experimenting with that. So that is the canary in the coal mine. So what does the canary in the coal mine actually look like? Here's my top 2. It is so obvious that I can't believe that I need to actually have this in here, but you would be amazed about the founders who have sales targets and never meet them, and never think about why they're not meeting them. So it is stating the obvious, and you're like, what? But it's really about setting sales targets and then reflecting on, did we meet them? Did we not meet them? And then if we didn't meet them, why didn't we meet them? So was it because the value proposition wasn't right? Is it because the market wasn't as big as what we thought it was? Is it a resourcing challenge? So we just didn't hire enough salespeople? Or is it a timing thing? So we thought that the sales cycle was going to be a month, but surprise, we're doing corporate sales. So the sales cycle is 12 to 18 months. So it's such a simple metric, so easy to track. That is definitely one of my favorites. And then the second one, and this is where Lyn stole the show earlier, was really being able to reflect on the cost of customer acquisition. So how much does it cost us to get a customer versus how much do we make from that customer over the time that they spend with our business? And I love this one too, because at its heart, by asking the question, what usually happens is, I don't know how much it costs us to get a customer, and I don't know how long they stay with us. So just asking the question, I found really delves into some really interesting conversations about, are we managing our marketing budget effectively? How do we stack up against our competitors? So, are we doing an Uber Eats? Are we doing a Deliveroo where we're constantly giving away freebies to get customers on board, but then we're not making that back? And have we got the right people in the team? So we're spending too much on operations, too much on development, too much on marketing. So it really starts to ask some interesting questions in that space. So reflecting on that, so they're my top two. So thinking about, are we hitting our sales targets? And do we know how much it costs us to our customer acquisition? What are they a good two, or are we missing some? If you either want to unmute or pop them in the chat, what are some of the other metrics that you might use in that space? Must have nailed it. Cricketers.
I like looking too at the process of conversion. And if quite often I've found with tech companies is that they think that all the conversion and the nurturing lead conversion process is going to happen digitally without the investment of individuals in key parts, particularly in the early phase, that, you know, we often forget the importance of that human interaction in order to get the momentum, and then it feeding back to the product development team. So important.
Awesome. That's a nice segue, Lyn, into our next one, is talking about the product team. So we've got something on the chat here. Yeah, awesomely. So lengthen the effort of conversion. So that's a really good suggestion. And it's quite interesting because the length and effort of conversion and that whole funnel has a symbiotic relationship with, is the product the right product? Is it at its right stage of the journey? So when we think about product management, I've kind of seen two really interesting things in this space, which is either companies launching too early, so the product is not at a point where customers are willing to pay for it, or launching too late. So either their competitors have already moved further ahead of them in the market and gained market share, or they've overinvested, so they've gold-plated in a solution that people didn't need. So what I've found really interesting about product management, and you can see from the underlining my passion here, is really thinking about the balance between what customers might want. So you never know what a customer wants until they actually hand over their cash. They'll tell you what they want, but then they won't actually necessarily pay for it. So it's always thinking about how can you, what a customer tells you want and what they pay for are always two different things. But how do you get that balance right? So how do you make decisions as a leadership team, because you're balancing voice of customer, your technical teams, your customer service team? You're always going to have to make a trade-off, because particularly in that startup environment, you've only got a finite set of resources. So it's really thinking about, do we have the right people at the table to make decisions about what customers are actually paying for? So I'm sure we've all heard horror stories about quite technical teams who build these amazing products that they love, but there's not that voice of customer from the sales team about great feature, but you know, we can't bill for it. So that's something that's near and dear to my heart. And I'm sure there's probably someone in the room thinking product management isn't that very how do we quantify that? Because it's sometimes very qualitative. So when we ask our customers for feedback, we get words, not numbers. So I thought for a bit of a laugh, I'd include in here some of the initial feedback that we've had from Dark Story when we asked our customers, what do they think? So this one here needs to be more murders and dodgy stuff. That's been a really interesting one. We've heard that many times. So the good news is we may have misstepped on launching with Perth historical pub crawls, but listening, we're going to be launching a few murder and macabre routes over the next few months. So there is definitely a value in some of the qualitative feedback as well. And some of the other things that you can see here is talking about interactivity, gamification, those types of things. So you can read this, but what we've found really interesting as a team is we've got quite a comprehensive dashboard behind the scenes, and we can actually see who's downloaded the app, what pages have they been to? What have they paid for? Not have they paid for? Have they downloaded it? Have they actually walked around? Those types of things. So while we do get this quality feedback, we go, yeah, awesome. That does help us with our product planning roadmap. What we use from a decision-making standpoint when we're deciding about what to invest in and what not to invest in is really watching the actual stats behind user behavior. So, and that will vary business by business as to how stalky you can get. We don't collect their data when they're actually out walking. So we don't actually know physically where they are. We're not watching them every time they've got the app open. But really thinking about, okay, how can you take that qualitative stuff and turn it into numbers that you can track and watch like a hawk with your team. So this is actually, I keep on saying this is my favorite. I think they're almost all my favorites, aren't they? The reason that I really like this one, so product teams missing scope, schedule, budget, is because it really starts to tap into what I alluded to before. Are we overcooking the product? Are we undercooking the product? Have we got a capability issue so we don't actually know how long it takes to do things? Or have we not had a conversation around the level of risk? So I know as a startup and in early stage innovation, it can be really hard because you're doing things for the first time. If someone said, oh, how long is that going to take? I haven't done it before, got no idea. Is really to start build those cultures around using thinking about what's the best case, worst case scenario. So really getting teams to think about, rather than if they're over optimistic, is getting them to think more pessimistically, or if they're in the other direction, so everything is at least 6 months, is really starting to get them to think in the other direction. So I absolutely love this one because it unpacks all types of questions about what's happening behind the scenes in terms of your product development processes and also the internal capability of your team. You'll get a laugh out of that one. I like the sound of deadlines as they swoosh past. So really starting to think about what's the culture in the organisation. And another nice simple one is, what is the product payback period? So if we add an extra feature, how long will it take for us to be able to make that money back? So again, like the first metric of thinking about sales targets, it's such a simple thing to track. So how much did it cost us to build? Asking that question. It's not a question that every startup knows. How much did it cost us to build that? So merely having that question in place creates some really interesting conversations. And then also then asking about the payback period is, well, how much are we actually going to sell it for? So that's definitely another favorite. So what we've just spoken about is 2 metrics in the product management space. So we've spoken about the product payback period, and we've spoken about tracking key milestones, so scope, schedule, and budget. When everyone who's on the call, when you think about product management metrics and how you might manage whether your product management is on track or not, what are some of the types of things that you use, whether you want to unmute or drop something in the chat? Ooh. Is everyone worried I'm going to stalk them now? It's like she's got our data. No, I don't. Excellent. All right, so I'll move on to our next one. Hands up if anyone gets the cultural reference there. That's the Wizard of Oz. Yes, thank you. Leanne's there. Awesome. So I find customer experience a really interesting topic, because if you go on LinkedIn right now, there are so many people talking about customer experience and user experience, and it is a topic near and dear to my heart. But I'm also not always 100% convinced that it's the most important metric. So this is the debate that I would love to carry over into our sessions when we break up into different sessions, is really thinking about, is customer experience the most important metric to track? And good customer sales and support, so this is an opinion, can hide a multitude of sins. So if you're an early stage startup who may not have fully automated every business process under the sun, and you might be looking at it and going, look, it's going to cost us $1 million to automate that to give the best possible customer experience. Could you hire an extra support person for $80,000 a year and give exceptional service? So that's just something for everyone to debate, is can you use customer experience as a way to hide some of the other things that are happening in your early stage startup? So that customers, so we call it Wizard of Oz, so hence the reference of what could you do behind the curtain so that it's not immediately clear to customers what's happening. So an example that I've got from one of my other startups called Ignitsi was all about automating business planning processes. And one of the things that we found really interesting with Ignitsi is when we put the tool out there, everyone's like, I'll do business planning tomorrow. It's not that exciting. But the minute that we offered support, everyone was all on it, booking a session. Hey, this is awesome. This is the best thing ever. So we realized really early on the tool wasn't actually that great. What was actually good was our customer service. So really thinking about what role can you use in terms of sales and support while you're getting some of your products up to speed. So how do you measure that is an interesting question. So customer conversion rates is always a classic one. So how many people started at the top of the marketing funnel? How many people came through the other end? Who came through the other end? How long did we keep them for? Were they loyal? So that's a nice one to track, because it really links back into thinking about how much does it cost, who's where, those types of things. And it really helps from an estimation point of view. So particularly people who are working with investors, knowing those customer conversion rates is absolutely key for your financial modelling as well. If you haven't got those stats, it makes it really hard to do forward planning. And this is the most controversial of the lot. You either love it or you hate it, which is the Net Promoter Score. So if you asked your customers on a scale of 1 to 10, how likely would they be to recommend your business? So I'm just interested in a quick thumbs up, thumbs down. Who loves it? Who hates it? Net Promoter Score. Lyn's like, nah, thumbs down. Thumbs up from Helen. Thumbs up from Lee. Thumbs up from Zoe. It's definitely a decisive one. Thumbs up from Vicky. So hopefully we can get everyone debating Net Promoter Score, yay or nay. And Selma's added in here, could work really well depending on the product or service. So it'd be really cool to tap into when does the Net Promoter Score work well, and when is it becomes a bit of a hindrance. So I'm now going to throw over to Lyn to pop everybody into breakout rooms. So I've thrown 6 metrics out there, opened up a bit of a debate about my favourite metrics. If you could only focus on one metric, what would you focus on and why? So that's what we're going to talk about in the breakout spaces that Lyn's going to pop everyone into.
Okay, so I'm going to make them fairly small so you have the chance to introduce each other to, so there'll be 2 or 3 people per room. So we're going to talk about which metric do we prefer and why. Okay, I'll put you through now.
Fantastic. Thanks everyone for coming back. So how many rooms did we end up with, Lyn?
We ended up with 4 rooms. We had Fiona, Helen and Selma in one room. We had Naomi and Nick in another, Lauren and Vicky in one, and in fact we had 5 rooms, I think, because you were in a room too, weren't you? Yeah. With and then I was out here with Leanne and Zoe.
Cool. Well, then if we start from the last, in the main room, Leanne, Zoe and Lyn, was there one particular, did you agree on a particular critical metric, or what did you debate?
I think we all had different ones. Leanne, so she works in more the membership side of BWA, and she comes from a retail background. So she was saying, that customer conversion and building relationships and really trying to add value to that customer and, keep them as a long-term partner was one of hers. And then Lyn and I were sort of more around that number 3, so the miss scope, schedule and budget milestones. And I sort of was taking it from more a work standpoint where we're constantly doing new things, where we've got new programs running. We've got our big thing is at the moment on like data analytics and building digital skills of students. And cybersecurity and things like that. So there's being able to understand and, get that scope right initially and then be able to scale it is, full on. So, just because customers' needs are just constantly changing at the moment. So always trying to preempt what your customer wants and getting that right.
Awesome. Were there any debates across any of the rooms about love or hate NPS as a metric for thinking about customers and changing customers?
When Nick and I were having a chat, we were looking at it probably as less as probably a metric and more as a marketing tool. So still feeling that it was really quite important, but that's, we're both in service industry type businesses, people look at the review. And so also from a subconscious element, I do events and programs that I put together, and by someone at the end selecting, would you recommend to someone else? The next time I put something out, there's something subconsciously in them going, oh, well, I'd recommend it to someone else. Why wouldn't I do it? So probably we just had a discussion around how else it could be used rather than whether it was an effective metric.
That's awesome. Did anyone talk at all? We sort of touched on things like competitors and substitute products as well. Did anyone delve into that topic at all? Oh, interesting.
That is an interesting one. Having invested recently in supporting solo accounts, it was very interesting when we actually started blasting on our Google Ads campaign, how quickly Xero started bringing out really bespoke solopreneur campaigns and were bidding against our campaigns. And, really, I was very interested in your, those percentages that you had at the very beginning around the cost of being out competed for a really tiny little app-based business. Solo accounts was really struggling financially to be able to compete, to stay right up there on the first page, let alone first or even third ranking, because all those big guys just threw so much money because they could see what solo was doing.
Well, maybe that can just buy her out.
Yeah, well, I did suggest that.
Did anyone talk about sales forecasts or cost of customer acquisition?
We talked more about sales versus payback periods, and we were sort of saying it kind of depends on the upfront capital investment as to which one you might focus on. If the capital investment is so substantial that you could lose everything in life over it, then you're going to be really focused on that payback period, because you want to make sure that you're going to make the sales to be able to survive. However, if it's a little bit of money and you can probably afford to lose it, you'll be more focused on the sales, I think. To just bring the money in with little care about am I going to be able to pay off the debt as I go? Yeah.
I love it. That's definitely something that I can echo from Dark Story, because of the way that the business is structured, because it's a largely codeless app. So we haven't got substantial overhead. So it very much echoes how our key metric is very much around sales and conversions and those types of things, because we haven't got, as you said, those bigger, it's not a risky investment. So I love how you brought the aspect of risk into the conversation, because that's something I hadn't even really reflected on, is that perspective as well. So that's awesome that came to light. I'm just mindful of time, so I'm just going to jump back to, is there any, just before I jump into wrapping up, is there any final suggestions, words, comments that came out of the breakout spaces that anyone would like to add in?
Just something that Lauren and I talked about, and I think, it's encompassed in many of the top 6, but the whole idea of the return on investment, and not actually putting in the proper equation for the amount of time that's spent, especially by founders, where, it's like, oh, but I'm here anyway. But actually, if you were to cost that out, it would probably be quite expensive.
Oh, that's a good one too. I love that.
Yeah, we kind of touched on that too, Erin, in that trying to get to build the relationships with clients is, what I feel comfortable charging clients with, and what I have to take on myself is and then that brought me to, am I in the wrong market? And that was the key metric for me at the moment, was the market is too difficult to convince to do what they need to do, what they know they need to do, but they're requiring me to provide them with too much justification. So yeah, wrong market was mine, but all of the others, it's all very relevant.
That's great that you managed to get the insight and directly relate it to what you're working on at the moment. So just taking us back. So hopefully everyone can see the presentation now. Awesome. So just in terms of a few takeaways as you disappear and you think, oh, a week from now, what did we actually talk about? What are the kind of 4 things that I was rabbiting on about? So thinking about cash flow is not always an early warning sign. So what are some of the other metrics that you might be able to use in your business? So thinking about things like risk, the nature of your business, what are some of those other early warning signs that you could use in addition to cash flow? It was really interesting that a lot of the group gravitated towards thinking about markets and products and how they are the canary in the coal mine. So if you haven't got that market product fit, that's very much something to think about. In terms of products and product management, I love that there was a few groups that delved into thinking about scope, schedule and budget. So something near and dear to my heart is thinking about how those great processes make good enough products. So what is the tipping point for that? And then, as I mentioned, thinking about customer metrics in lots of interesting different ways. So Wizard of Oz is really critical in those early steps. So things like net promoter score, things like payback periods, how do they interplay with some of the other things that might be happening in your business and what's most important at any given time? So it would be remiss of me, because we've only just opened and scratched the surface of a great conversation, and was really appreciative. It's so great that everyone engaged so deeply with the topic, because it's a lot to cover in an hour and a half. And I'm glad that everyone stayed on the call as well, rather than disappeared. So love that you've taken an hour and a half out of your day to connecting with these topics. I'm really thankful for everybody for that. As I mentioned, we're only just starting to touch the surface. So if you're in a business advisory type space, more than happy if you want to connect for a quick call to talk more. So if you're somebody who offers services to your business, so accounting, those types of services, legal, feel free to get in contact, and we can set up a session to explore how we might collaborate together in the future. If you're in a particular organisation and you're delving into some of these topics at the moment, more than happy to set up a discovery workshop to kind of explore some of the different options and fit. And for those who haven't heard me rabbit on before, I'm really passionate about growing the innovation ecosystem more broadly. So if you share passion for all things innovation, so whether it be technology or otherwise, farming, history, please connect with me on LinkedIn, either individually or the Exchange Collective, because I absolutely love supporting other people on their journeys. So as I think a few people on the call attest, I absolutely love the person on LinkedIn giving you a thumbs up and a random comment, because I know as a small business how important it is to have people who engage and create conversations around the exciting things that we're all doing. So I'll hand back to Lyn to finish us off.
Thanks, Erin. You can, that's good. You can stop sharing there. And thank you everyone for being on the call today on Zoom and participating. So much talent in our broader community. Whether you're a classic, a premium member, or a subscriber to our e-news, or just jumping in as a guest, you are a businesswoman, you're in Australia, or you're a supporter of the BWA Collective. So we really, really appreciate everyone's involvement around this. If you've got ideas for future topics that you would like us to delve into, we're always keen to hear. And you know, our program evolves. It can take us as little as 2 months to get a program topic into our events calendar. So we're very nimble and quick at getting things up, and we've got amazing connections, deep connections all around the nation and internationally. So if there's people that you want to hear from and you think they'd be a good speaker for us to engage for you, then we'd love to hear that. If you want to host an event, we'll get involved. Reach out to Leanne, reach out to me. We'd love to keep the ball rolling. Now that things are open, it's so much easier now to re-engage and get things happening that are really cool and fun, as well as building our knowledge. So thanks very much, everyone. Great to have you here, and have a wonderful weekend.